iRacing.com is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all over the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics and engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. iRacing's web-based interface allows members to compare stats and test drive any combination of car and track instantly. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 60,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsport organizations like SRO Motorsports Group to deliver virtual races based on the real-life Blancpain GT series. iRacing's Blancpain Endurance Series features team racing, giving members the ability to build a team and participate in races ranging from 3 hours to 24 hours. Additional partners include NASCAR, IMSA, V8 Supercars, IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own 24 hours of Spa, Bathurst 1000, Daytona 500, and many more. iRacing.com, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car.
iRacing, you wanted the best, you got them for abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
Tonight's live broadcast of the Geodesic Racing Oceanic Sprint Championship, round 7 of the series at Sebring International Raceway, looking to continue what has been an incredibly exciting championship with fantastic racing. My name is Reese Gardner, and joining me in the commentary box tonight, Bo Albert. Bo, hello.
Hello, and this is going to be a bit of an exciting race, isn't it, Reese? Of course, Sebring, it's known for its bumps, fast nature, and also more than one overtaking opportunity here tonight as well. One pit stop to play as well. I think we're in for a good night of GT racing.
Yeah, we certainly are. This GT Leagues Australia series has certainly turned it up at every single track we visited this season, and this looks to be absolutely no different. As usual, it's a 45-minute race here at Sebring on this beautiful Anzac Day. And yeah, as you said, the bumps, they are the one thing that sets Sebring apart from a lot of other circuits in an incredible way. And they're intentionally preserved in order to increase the character of the track, I suppose. It's certainly successful at that.
Oh, absolutely. Because, of course, when you come to Sebring, the first thing you do is not tune the car to be quick. You tune it to survive the bumps around here. It's that crazy, especially the final corner. I believe it's called Sunset Bend. It is ridiculously bumpy, and if you find yourself offline there for even, half a meter or a bit further than that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So that's one thing the drivers are going to have to watch out for. But also, it is sometimes an overtaking spot into that final turn. So we'll see who's brave, who's got the setup, and who's willing to risk it all.
Yeah, certainly. Sunset Bend, a very interesting turn, actually. It's basically a triple apex affair. It's basically made up of 3 separate kinks into one long 180-degree bend. It does open up a bit on the entry, so you are able to put one up the inside if you are brave enough, but of course you've got to contend with those very extreme bumps on the inside of the circuit. So looking at the conditions for tonight's race, 28-degree air temperature, 32-degree track temperature. We're racing in the morning here at Sebring. Easterly winds at 8 kilometers an hour with a relative humidity of 25%. So it's reasonable weather here at Sebring. Bit of grip available to the drivers. Not exactly slippy slidey as we've seen in hot sessions in the past, but should certainly be interesting for the drivers out there, most of whom have decided to go for the Mercedes for the season, as we are looking at drivers lining up on the start-finish straight for something very special.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Today falling on Anzac Day, which is such a big day in Australian history, and of course, it had such an impact on the country as we know it. So we're going to play a little bit of a tribute here in just a few moments' time, and this is just our way of saying, thank you to those who fought so much for this country and everything, we have here in society today. So this is our little tribute, and it's going to be something quite special and unique, I think, Reese.
Yeah, certainly. It's a great gesture by the drivers and the organisers to do this. I mean, Anzac Day, it's something that every Australian and Kiwi grows up with, and it's part of our national identity, I suppose. It's our, as you said, it's our way of honouring those who served, especially during the conscription era, and unfortunately, due to the actions and the sacrifices of these servicemen and women, some of whom were acting against their will in a big respect. They allow us to live in a world today where serving in the armed forces is a choice, and we really want to honour that today. So all the drivers, it's a fantastic sight seeing everyone lining up on the front straight of Sebring, and once everyone comes to a stop, lining up in formation, we will play the last post and have a bit of a moment of silence to remember those who served Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. So just got a few more drivers ready to join the grid, and then we'll begin what should be a very unique situation here for the Oceanic Sprint Championship.
It's got a couple of drivers lining up. Leighton Fine and Alexander Bird, as well as some other drivers making their way around the latter part of the circuit. So the final few drivers just lining up now, making their way through the final bends of the circuit. Mauricio Lastres and Corey Ott, final two drivers to come up to this starting grid. It's a very large grid as usual for the Oceanic Sprint Championship. Looks to be in excess of 30 cars, maybe even close to 40. So a great turnout for this event as usual. Fantastic series with some of the best in Australian sim racing being presented. So we come up now to the starting grid. The drivers lining up 3 abreast on the start-finish straight of Sebring International Raceway here in Florida. And we can begin proceedings, lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Yes, indeed. There we go, Bo. It's an interesting way to honor our Australian and Kiwi servicemen and women. Of course, real life and sim racing sometimes intersect in very strange ways, but that was really nice.
Yeah, that was a really, really nice thing to do. And of course, even a few teams on the grid, such as your own Fusion Sim Racing out there, wearing some very nice tributes on their cars tonight. So of course, this just shows how much of a big deal this is, not just to, this series or anything, but the entire population of Australia. It's fantastic. And now the cars roar back into life, and we can now get back into what we all came for. It's going to be an exciting 45 minutes. We've got 39 GT3 cars ready to go. Time to get back to business, Reese.
Oh yeah, certainly, and boy am I excited. This series is, it's honestly, as a spectator sport, it is one of the best you can find in the AusNZ community. Of course, if V8 supercars and touring cars aren't necessarily your thing, GT3 always turns it on, and it's going to be no different here at Sebring. I just want to talk about the track for a second. We did talk briefly about Sunset Bend, the final turn, but another interesting corner that will really come into play, I think, in tonight's racing is the first corner. Formerly a completely flat-out affair, left-hand kink. In the last couple of revisions of the track's layout, it was tightened up, but it still remains an incredibly fast corner, and it's almost impossible to get your line right through there. On lap 1, it's going to be interesting.
Oh, absolutely, because, you'll always have people who get very good starts and some people who don't get necessarily good starts. So there's no reason to think we couldn't be heading into turn 1, potentially 3 or 4 wide. And like you were saying there, it is a very tough opening turn because there's bumps on the inside, there's a wall on the inside, and there's not a huge amount of runoff on the exit, but there is grass. You can find yourself in trouble as well. So it's going to be very, very tough for these guys to all get through as cleanly as possible, and that's what they will be trying to do, is get themselves through clean, no contact, have a nice car so they can fight into turn 2, which is another big braking zone. But turn 1, like you were saying, it's a corner where you will never go through there and feel like you've got it right. It's always a corner where there's always a little bit left on the table, and it's one of those places where you can gain or lose quite a lot on the driver in front of you. So for the drivers tonight, it's definitely a corner to watch out for, just like the other 17 corners around the Sebring circuit.
Yeah, certainly. Every single one of them with their own brand of surface difficulty, with the bumps of these old 1950s airport runways and access roads. Used to be a military airfield, did Sebring, during the Second World War. Had its first race in 1950 on a layout vastly different to the one that we're racing on now. But the start-finish straight has always been in the same spot. And as I touched on earlier on in the broadcast, the people who run this track actually keep the surface bumpy on purpose to preserve the track's character. Most racetracks go through an entire resurfacing, maybe once every 5 or 10 years or something like that. Sebring has never had a whole resurfacing. It's always done in patches and on purpose.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that just brings so much character to the track, and also such a challenge to the drivers, because you're not just racing on one surface type. There might be 2, 3, 4 or more on this circuit, and even parts of this circuit aren't even tarmac. They're concrete, they're slippery. If you get hot conditions or you're overheating the tires or something, those concrete sections on the track are going to be brutal on you. You're not going to be able to get the power down, and it's going to be a real challenge. And you know, whilst you might be fighting the car on one section of the track on one tarmac type, you might not be in such a tough spot on another tarmac spot. So this track really ebbs and flows, and there's so much dynamic to getting not just a quick lap, but the perfect race stint in as well, because everything is changing. When the tires fall off, you've got different grip in different parts of the track, and it's very, very difficult to be consistent lap after here.
Yeah, very little tarmac runoff here at Sebring. Most of the runoff that isn't gravel is former runway anyway, so it's not exactly there for the express purpose of protecting a driver if they run off. So there's not much room for mistakes here at Sebring, especially in that middle section of the track going up to oh goodness me, I'm not in the right frame of mind. I'm forgetting corner names around this track. Tower is the name of the turn, coming on to the just coming out of the midsection twisties. It's man, quite an interesting set of corners there, almost like a street circuit. This is such a historic venue, and you know it is famous for a reason. 39 GT cars going through these corners. You know, they're barely wide enough to fit 2.5 cars side by side in places. It's a crazy track, definitely old school. Even though there are a few sections of this track that are only 20-something years old.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those tracks where, you know, it's a bit of an odd combination, and, you know, if it was made in today's modern day, like track construction, it wouldn't exactly pass many regulations, because it's got the history behind it. It's got the, you know, so much effort and history behind it. I'm repeating myself there, but it's just such a historic circuit in which, you know, if it did disappear off the calendar for whatever reason, people would notice, and it's one of those tracks that no one wants to go without, because it does bring such an interesting flavor to the series.
It certainly does, and in these cars you can expect lap times of just under 2 minutes in length. Brad Watson currently at the top of these warm-up session timesheets, 1:59.625, but only 5 thousandths of a second, behind him. John Peacenik in that Ford GT. And Peacenik has been a real story this season, because in the first couple of rounds before the last Balance of Performance update to the GT3s, we saw Peacenik in, I believe, a McLaren, but then he decided to go for the Ford GT once car selection became locked. So the Ford GT not the most popular GT3 car, even when it was first brought into GT3 on iRacing. And it's long been the ugly duckling car of the class, but Peasnick, he's driven that car for as long as I can remember, and he's stuck out with it once again.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing for him. He's clearly got a really good confidence level in the car. He knows what to do with the setup-wise in the car. And if you ever join like a sprint series, official race, or an endurance race or something, you'll often see John in that Ford anyway. He loves that car, spends so much time in it, and because there aren't so many drivers that do run the Ford, he tends to be the outlier in that car. If that car ever has an advantage on a track, which I don't think it would have too much of an advantage around Sebring. This is more a track focused on getting traction out of the corners and also carrying entry speed. But if that car ever does have a really strong track like a Motegi or something, a very, very medium speed corners, he's going to have a big advantage because no one else can obviously jump into another car because we're locked into this series. But he does have the potential to do some really amazing things in that car, which we saw him almost pull off at Spa with a fantastic race effort there. And like you were saying, even early in the season before the BOP, he even had one race at Daytona where he was very, very strong but unlucky with a pedal issue.
Yeah, certainly. And Peasnick, he really drives that Ford hard as well. A consistent thing that we've seen with him in previous rounds is almost giving the impression that he's barely got a handle on that car underneath him. When he's involved in a battle situation, John, you can see him sliding in most places, really struggling to keep the rear end of that car under control. So he's got passion in his driving. He's got a real conviction to his driving in this series. It would be really interesting to see what he can do here at Sebring. So far, it looks like he's doing pretty well considering that warm-up time he's just set. It's good enough for third because Anthony Winkleman has just gone to the top.
Yeah, Winkleman has a lot of pace in the BMW, and we know the Trick Sim Sport guys are getting a lot out of this BMW. They're very quick, even have championship leader, currently Ross Rizzo, in that car as well. But we're getting ready to get set onto the grid, and with 39 cars and a very long outlap, we will have to get through the grid pretty sharpish. But yeah, absolutely, Anthony Winkleman has to be one of the favorites for this race here today. He's got a lot of pace in it, and he's going to be kicking it off from pole position race.
He certainly is. Anthony Winkleman on pole with Miguel Vigo in second place. Trent Thomas in third. The top car for Fusion Sim Racing is Brad Watson lines up in fourth. Last season's champion Ross Rizzo lining up in fifth place with Alexander Bird, Craig Edwards and Blake Neck making it a Fusion Sim Racing 6, 7, 8. Peasnick and Martin Zilvassi round out the top 10 for Trick Sim Sports and Element Motorsports as well.
Adam Briggs will be kicking things off on the sixth row of the grid with Andrew Welter, who has one of the most incredible helmets I've ever seen with his name plastered all over it. In 13th on the grid will be Leighton Fine, and he has Carlos Villa in P14, who has always been a strong charger through the field, so that's one driver to keep your eye on, as well as Desmond Harberger rounding out the top 15. V8 Online's very own Thomas Hinz kicks things off from 16th with Philip Morden and Philip Worley, making it a very interesting Philip row of the grid for that those two slots, with Dylan Shepherd and once again V8 Online's Cameron Dance kicking it off out of the top 20.
In the Shave Software Audi, Mauricio Lastres lining up in 21st position with Adam Wright in 22nd, Steve Jansen lining up in 23rd with James McKee and another familiar figure to the V8's Online commentary box, Corey Ott, recently signed up with Bush Fink Racing, so he's carrying a completely new livery on that car. Dan King in 26th position with Richard Hunter in 22nd for DPR. Joshua Skin lining up as well for the same team in 28th position. Damon Stockton in 29th and Javin Wood lining up in 30th.
Coming out of 31st grid slot will be Reese Keane, and here's Brett Hender for company alongside him. Matthew Kidd and Benjamin Johnson round out the next row of the grid for 33rd and 34th place, with Daniel Misdale making his way into the top 35. Les Peck makes their way into 36th, with Brad Cooper, Ben Wilkinson and Matthew Huppert rounding out 39 GT3 cars, making their way around one of the longest pace laps in iRacing, which, Reese, we know how critical fuel saving is in these GT3 cars. This is a long pace lap, there is already strategy playing out, and it's not even the green flag.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of straight line sections here at Sebring. You spend an awful lot of it on throttle for how many slow corners there are. So they'll be wanting to set their fuel maps as low as they can go, clutch it in 6th gear around most of this hot lap. Doesn't look like Anthony Winkleman's doing that, or doesn't sound like it, rather. He's keeping those revs rather high behind the pace car. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, not something I would have thought he would have done, especially considering the BMW does have the second smallest fuel tank in this entire grid. The only car smaller is the Ferrari, so normally, you know, in the BMW, it's a car I'm familiar with from the World Championship Series. You really have to fuel save in the BMW, and he has no interest in doing that right now. I wonder if his plan is simply just, you know, use a little bit of fuel now, but not sure why. But perhaps that's just giving a little bit of an inkling that when this race does go green and it's, you know, heading into turn 1 as fast as you can, he's not going to be playing it safe. He's going to be max attack and trying to make a gap very, very early.
Yeah, that is a possibility. You also got to think about engine temperature. iRacing's cars are a bit sensitive to engine temperature. I remember from my time driving the HPD LMP2 prototype that especially around high-speed tracks like Daytona, if you let the engine warm up, it really makes a difference in terms of lap time, and I'm sure the GT3 cars are no exception at all. So Winkelmann probably getting the temperature of his engine up a little bit so that he can get that jump there at the start, build up a bit of a gap, maybe consolidate his lead.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, but we're about to find out all the answers to our questions, because 45 minutes of racing around the 5.9 kilometers of Sebring International Raceway is about to kick off. We're expecting a pit stop. The track temp is relatively low, so the times are going to be extremely quick. Here we go, rounding Sunset Bend. The pace car will start to accelerate. The lights are off. Cars make their way through, getting ready to plant the throttle as hard as they can. Now, double file. The pace car pulls in now. And Anthony Winkleman with a huge hold, but he gets the throttle down now.
Have a look at that. They backed them up. They backed them up. They're going 4 wide down the front straight. That's Ross Rizzo there coming up there on the inside, coming into turn 1. Have a look there around the outside. Alexander Bird in turn 1. Oh, this is going to be very interesting coming down into turn 3. Got to be careful, guys. The crash in the back we're hearing.
Oh, and there's more at turn 2 as well.
Ouch.
Martin Silvestri involved in that. So that was a bit...
Oh.
Still going. He's got turned again. There's been a huge accident once again. Unfortunately, once again, 2 rounds in a row, we find ourselves with a big crash, but so far we still look to be under green flag conditions, and a lot of cars still recovering their way at the moment. Anthony Winkleman still leading ahead of Miguel Vigo and Ross Rizzo in P number 3, who had a great start from the 3rd row of the grid. Trent Thomas losing a little bit of ground, but now getting drafted heavily by his teammate Alexander Bird. And once again, we have the Fusion Sim Racing cars all in a pack. But what carnage that was at the opening lap there.
Yeah, it certainly was.
Peace
turning Watson, but oh, hang on, what?
Desmond Harburger had a huge dive there, completely lost his braking marker or something, and unfortunately went straight into the side of Carlos Villa.
Big whack.
This is a interesting first lap race.
Yeah, it certainly is, and Cameron Dance is all smushed up behind these guys, going side by side with Lastres coming through this double apex turn. Goodness me, this is a really interesting lap one we're seeing here, but Cameron Dance is once again proving that he is one of the best racers in this field, as he's trying his best to make his way through all of this carnage, and it looks like Lastres might be trying to get him back here.
Yeah, these guys are playing for keeps in the midfield, aren't they, as Lastres dives it up the inside, not going to give it up at all, and they're still going side by side, but look at the speed Cam manages to carry around the outside. Brilliant run, but unfortunately Lastres has a fantastic... There's a spin in front of the 17 car in the middle of the straight!
Okay, that is not a good position for Desmond Harburger to be in at all. Oh,
there's been another crash into the background.
What on earth is going on here? Okay, so let's regroup here. Let's see what on earth happened. Looks like Des lost it trying to avoid Carlos Villa. So okay, so Oh, okay, here's what happened. Vila lost it on his own in the middle of the last turn, and Hardberger was coming up behind him, saw a gap, tried to go for it, but it closed, and then he lost it. So, goodness me, that would be very scary.
I can imagine there's quite a few heart rates up at the moment. That was a very, very crazy start. And also from 4th on the grid at the start of this race to now down on the side of the grid, Brad Watson stopped. What has happened to him as well? This has just been a chaotic field opening few corners. And unfortunately, a lot of drivers beginning to fall foul of this. So,
yeah, Watson's been standing there since the lap 1 incident. He was turned around by Peasnick on lap 1, and he's just sat there.
Okay, so potentially an issue escaping off the track or something along those lines, but something for the marshals to potentially look at recovering the car, because that is in a pretty dangerous spot on the exit of the track. But we'll turn our attention back towards the front of the field, because Anthony Winkelmann has had a fantastic opening few laps, has got a good lead over Ross Rizzo, but look at the Fusion Sim Racing cars in the background. They're not going to play too nicely with each other just yet.
No, certainly not. It's quite interesting seeing the racing action between these guys as they're all fighting for top 10 positions. So they're definitely not going to go for any team orders stuff just yet. Trent Thomas just keeping an eye on his mirrors here as Craig Edwards has a look. Alexander Bird up at the front of that pack, but Ross Rizzo in 3rd place is doing very nicely there, pressuring the back of Miguel Vigo. So these guys have kept it nice and clean so far as they go by. The stricken car of Watson's still there. Wondering why Watson has not escaped yet.
Yeah, a little bit odd, so we'll have to wait and see if there is any issues at all.
Also, noting that another casualty of the lap 1 carnage was Martin Silvassi. Oh. And the crash into the pit lane on the previous lap was Les Peck and Philip Worley.
Yeah, so quite a few drivers affected in incidents there, so it's a shame to see.
This top 10 is looking mighty competitive, even at this early stage in the race. Anthony Winkelmann is looking nice and comfortable there in the lead, but for just about every position behind him, there is a battle and a pressure for position. Adam Briggs has managed to find himself in the middle of the top 10 here, or in the latter part of the top 10, rather, up from 11th place. But John Peasnick really pressuring the back of him here.
Yeah, he is. John Peasnick really trying to put in a good effort in that Ford GT once again, and all over the back of Adam Briggs right now, who's running the Audi and just trying to close himself onto the back of the Fusion Sim Racing train, which is awesome to see.
So we're coming here onto the back straight coming up to Sunset Bend. Doesn't seem to be much moving around between these guys in the top 10. This is where the draft comes into play. I have to tell you what, considering our discussion before, Bo, I think quite a few guys will be looking to fuel save rather than go for any harsh moves this early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of drivers are trying to play it safe at the moment, but one driver that isn't is Anthony Winkelmann, who's definitely checked out. But Ross Rizzo looking pretty content at the moment. Oh, Cam Dance has had an issue. He's around, and also there's a few other incidents as well. A few drivers caught up there. And what has happened to Cam Dance coming around the final corner? He's just kind of almost looped it on his own there. He's had a very interesting entry to the corner. He's got a little bit of oversteer just on one of the bumps there. Tried to get on the power, lost it, collected one of the Mercedes. That was Andrew Welter with his amazing helmet. Cam has then ate concrete, and unfortunately now in the pit lane, and that's going to be a lengthy stop with a lot of damage.
There we go. I'm back now. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, someone put server deafen on in my Discord, so I'm not too sure what happened there.
That's a good race, but nonetheless, we do have a very, very exciting race on our hands still at the moment, because Ross Rizzo still pressuring the back of Miguel Vigo and not letting him get away at all, and the gap still down at about 0.2 of a second as they're fighting, and still waiting to see if Ross Rizzo can just find another 10th or anything to potentially get a move done into Sunset Bend. And he's had a very good line the last few laps into this section of corners, the Flowing Le Mans section of this track. But that Audi is so good out of that corner, whether it's rear end or whether it's mid-engined layout.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, the Audi with that mid-engine layout, it's got that mid-corner grip that really allows it to get an advantage on corner exit, but down the straight it can sometimes suffer a little bit for it. The BMW, of course, the car with the least amount of straight line speed in the GT3 class, but you know, all of that is it all works out equally because this current balance of performance between the cars, I think a lot of people are in agreement this is one of the best BOPs that iRacing has ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the closest they've ever got, which is fantastic to see. And that, I think, is a lot down to them changing their philosophy from only doing it once a year or so to now doing it, you know, with constant updates. And immediately we've seen the result of that because we have, you know, a BMW up front followed by an Audi. Then, yes, there is another BMW, but we've got Mercedes up there. We've got Peasnick and the Ford up there. And unfortunately, no McLarens in the field here today. But if there were, I'm sure they'd be very competitive as Leighton Fine is all over the gearbox of Craig Edwards' Fusion Sim Racing Audi. They're going to take it side by side into the hairpin, but Edwards is so strong on the brake, gets the line, but is he going to get a crossover? Leighton Fine thought about it, did not get the power down early, but Leighton Fine really applying the pressure in his Mad Cow racing car.
Yeah, he certainly is. Leighton Fine, he's one of those guys that has been around for quite a long time, and he knows his way around a race car. Just caught the grass, but goodness me, he's managed to hold on to it. And this battle with Craig Edwards is continuing to just carry on like the proverbial house on fire. Look at this as they come out of Tower Turn. Looks like Edwards has gotten a little bit of a better exit there.
Yep, definitely. And I think Leighton Fine, at this point in time, thinks he has a lot more pace than Craig Edwards does because he's getting very, very aggressive. And he's really putting a lot of pressure on, which I'm surprised about because it is still relatively early in the race. And you would not think that there would be too many issues as...
Yeah, that's Leighton Fine just catching the grass coming onto the back straight. And that has... that's lengthened the gap between him and Edwards somewhat. Sorry about that, that little exclamation. Edwards taking a bit of a wider line, a wider entry into the last turn. That's really paying dividends for him on the exit. So it seems that Fine is a little bit stronger in that middle section of the track, but Edwards has the traction.
Yeah, a lot of traction in the Fusion Sim Racing Audi, which is great for those guys. But you were just mentioning there about taking different lines through Sunset Bend. It is one of those corners you can do as Leighton Fine does a little bit more lawn mowing of his turn 1 exploring. But turn 17, you can take a few different lines, and I think that's what we're seeing here with both Edwards and Fine, as they're just trying different things, just trying to get the most out of two very similar Audis. So it's very interesting to see as well. But we also do have another battle just a few cars back. Philip Morden starting to come under pressure from Lastres, who has had a very, very strong last few laps. And he's just trying to make his way back through the field a little bit. And he's had a very good start so far, but he's trying to get past that FT1 Mercedes. And now we're going to see the BOP difference between the Audi and the Mercedes, because some in the current BOP do say that the Audi is not quite there. It needs another 5 kilos or so off, but Lastres seems to be doing a very good job. And unfortunately, Philip Morden is stuck in a Audi sandwich.
Yeah, he certainly is, and it's quite the interesting sandwich to be stuck in, because in the Mercedes, you've got that big German V8 over the front axle, which means in terms of agility of the car, it doesn't have as much, but coming out of slow corners, the Mercedes historically has been one of the superior cars. It's just able to get that power down like no other car in the class can. We'll see what Philip can do here coming onto the back straight. Takes a little bit of a wider line, but you can see he's managed to get a little bit of a run there on Mauricio Lastres.
Yeah, he has, and there is nothing Lastres can do. Of course, not much of a wind here today, and only 8 kilometers an hour heading towards the east, so not much helping Lastres to get behind that AMG. And the second you get to that straight, Morden just able to put the power down, and he's gone. But a bit of a slide on the exit of Sunset. And that's going to be a few tenths lost in the favor of Lastres now. So he's going to close in a little bit more. And for Morden, that's not what you want to be doing, because towards the end of the lap and the very start of the lap is where the Mercedes is strongest. You do not want to be giving the advantage to the Audi in the middle sector.
No, certainly not. But Lastres, he just ran a little bit wide in turn one there, so he's on the back foot even more, and Morton's starting to gain a little bit more here on Carlos Villa. Oh, that is... Leighton dropping out? What? Blake next, sorry. Little lack of hearing on my part, but oh, goodness me, yeah. Blake neck out.
And that was our 6th place driver, unfortunately. So that is a huge shame for Fusion Sim Racing, who are running 4th, 5th, and 6th. A fantastic effort for those guys at the early start of the race. But now it is left down to Alexander Bird and Trent Thomas, who are still doing a fantastic job at the moment, holding down those spots. And if anything were to happen to anyone in the top 3 right now, they would find themselves on the podium, which would be fantastic for those guys. As Bird just doing a bit of lawn mowing once again at the exit of Tower Corner. So a lot of lawn mowing being done at the around this Sebring International Circuit here today, but still a few battles happening as well, as Lastra still trying to get to the back of Philip Morton, but not quite able to do it. But now Philip Morton almost looks like he's had a very good lap, and he's beginning to put Carlos Villa under pressure. So the two Geodesic Audis, they're trading places. One was doing the attacking, now one's having to do the defending.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The sandwich has become a little bit self-aware, and the filling is trying to break free, I suppose.
That's one way of putting it, I would suppose. But, that is so close to the wall for Philip Morton. He was getting every millimeter of track usage he could possibly get, and actually made a little bit of time on the back of Carlos Villa as well. So Philip Morton now gone from the defender to definitely be aggressive. And look at the straight line speed of the Mercedes heading towards turn 1, pulling car lengths at a time from the Audi, and he's looking very strong, a little bit wider than he would have liked at turn 1 on the entry, pulled it back mid-corner. But unfortunately, the Audi in front did lose a little bit of exit speed as well by running in the dirt. So this battle is still well and truly on, and these guys still running very good lap times at the moment, and Thomas Hinz isn't too far in front. So if Philip Morton could get a move done on Carlos Villa, there is still more top 10 potential for him if he can get past very, very soon. But it's that if he can get past, that is the big question here, because Carlos Villa, we know how good of a defender he can be. We know how hard he likes the race. And now, all of a sudden, Philip Morton looking a little bit vulnerable from Maurizio Lastres.
Yeah, certainly. It looked like Morton lost quite a bit of time in the section of the track after turn 1. So now Lastres, as you said, definitely right on the back of him once again. And Morton's struggling, I think, with a little bit of rear-end grip coming out of those slow corners now. Those rear tyres may be close to being given up all they can at this rate. But we'll see what happens in this last bit of the circuit where the straight line speed of the Mercedes comes into play.
Yeah, that will be the interesting thing to see, because, of course, Philip Morton already pulled a little bit of that margin back to Carlos Villa. So this gap is just ebbing and flowing constantly. No one really able to make a bit of a move, as Morton continuing to take such a late line. And I think that has killed all potential of him getting past past Villa, sorry, because Lastres has got a fantastic run. He's got the slipstream, but does he have an overlap? Not quite yet, but he's going to get it now. Thinks about the inside, but cannot get the nose far enough up the inside there. So Philip Morton not looking comfortable anymore, and Lastres really putting him under pressure, as in fact Carlos Villa dives to the pits. And that's interesting, because there's still 28 minutes left in this race. He's going for the big undercut.
Yeah, he certainly is, wanting to get as much of an undercut as he possibly can here. Also joining him in the pits, Andrew Welter and Steve Jansen, who does not have a very nice looking front end on that BMW anymore.
No, not at all. But we will jump a little bit further up the field, because of course John Piesnik and his absolute brilliant effort in the Ford, as always, has now found his way onto the back of Craig Edwards. And we know Piesnik loves a fight. We know he'll go for any move when it presents itself. So Craig Edwards, who has fallen back a little bit from his other Fusion Sim Racing drivers right now, he's got to be very, very careful, because Piesnik will not mess around if an opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, he certainly won't. Piesnik, one of the hardest pushing drivers in this field. Craig Edwards, knowing him personally, he's a consummate professional when it comes to his racing. He definitely knows what to do and when to do it. But up against a driver like John Piesnik, I don't believe I've ever seen Craig and John race each other directly before. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. They've got quite a bit of space in front of them to Adam Briggs, but this could get interesting. Have a look at how much Peacenik is pushing into Le Mans Curve. That is incredible. See, this is something that I've seen from Peacenik all season in the Ford. He just goes for the entry, absolutely leaning on those front tires, and it's to his detriment this time around. He's really fallen back from Craig Edwards this time. Leighton Fine will have seen that, and he'll be thinking, well, maybe I can get back in on this battle.
Yeah, he will, and he's been doing some very nice lap times. He's been matching the two in front, but he has not been making any mistakes, and he's been keeping rock solid consistent. So Leighton Fine not out of this by any means, and if John Peacenik continues pushing the boundaries like he is right now, you know, he could run out of tyres very quickly, and that will open the door very, very easily for Leighton Fine to get through. But of course, in this battle as well, if Peacenik can in fact get to the back of Edwards again, you have to remember as well, you have to think championship for Edwards as well. He's currently third in the championship. Behind him is Martin Silvassi and Cameron Dance. Both of those guys, I hate to say it, have had a nightmare race today, and they're not going to be finishing inside the top 30. Well, Cam Dance actually is 30th and out and running once again on track, which is great to see. But for Craig Edwards, this is a big, big round for him in order to secure third in the championship as well.
It certainly is, and you know, when you're in a position like that, when your main rivals are way out of position, when they're at a disadvantage, you want to be able to maximize that advantage for you. You want to be able to get as much of a leg up on your competitors as you possibly can. So, Craig, I think what he needs to focus on right now is just maintaining a clean race. If he gets passed by Peacenik, you know, it sucks losing a position, but you know, there's better hills to die on, I suppose. You got to preserve those points, consolidate.
Well, one person that is always preserving points very, very well is Ross Rizzo, and right in front of him, he has a whole bag more of them with Miguel Vigo, as he has found a massive amount of time because he had dropped back to about 0.7 of a second at one point. Gap is now visibly closer, and Ross Rizzo really making some moves in that Trick Sim Sports BMW. We know Trick Sim Sport like their BMWs, their front-engine GT3s in particular, of course. In Season 1, Rizzo was quite often seen in the Mercedes as well. But they love their front-engine BMWs as well as they do the Mercedes, and they've really found something because they don't look dynamite exactly at the start of the stint, but come the middle phase of this race, they just come alive. We've seen Winkelmann now pull a 3-second lead over Vigo, and now Ross Rizzo has put massive amounts of pressure onto the back of the Audi. And, you know, we'll have to wait and see how he plays this. Of course, fuel saving is huge in this series. So if you can save just a little bit of fuel, undercut them in the pits, bam, you could get the position there. Or you could play the aggressor and try and get the move done on track. And judging by the exit that Ross Rizzo is going for right now, heading towards the hairpin, I think he's going for the overtake as he's got a huge amount of overspeed. Doesn't go for the move though, but we've seen that Ross Rizzo can get a good exit. We've seen that Vigo can make a mistake on the exit as he kicks up the dirt on the exit. This could be a very interesting fight.
It certainly could be. We're seeing battles like this all throughout the field. You can see Rizzo, he's having a look behind Vigo there through the Fangio turns. Looking very interesting coming through this session. This is where the BMW is the strongest with these low and mid-speed corners. The Audi, of course, we talked about how agile it is, but the BMW is just that little bit better through the twisties than the Audi is. And Rizzo definitely using that to his advantage right now. He's just trying to keep himself in a little bit of slipstream. I don't know, he might be fuel saving, just lifting off a little bit before the braking zones.
Yeah, I think that is definitely an option for Ross Rizzo at this point because fuel saving, like we did say, you can save so much in the pit stop if you can save a litre or so less. And we know the BMW has a smaller fuel tank, but it's also less thirsty. The Audi is such a thirsty car when it comes to overall lap times. I think probably the only car more thirsty over a lap in terms of fuel usage is probably the McLaren. And that'll be very interesting to see if there is any McLarens returning to the series. But for right now, it's Audi versus BMW. And I think fuel saving right now is probably the best call of action for Ross Rizzo, because if he gets past, Vigo could just as easily try and get the move back done. But if you get the overlap in the pit stop, you know, you can very easily make a gap straight away if you're good on cold tires.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the main sort of end goal here is time. You got to think about those numbers. You want to try and make them as big as you can between you and the guy behind you. And as you said, if Ross Rizzo manages to get himself in the pits, maybe a little bit less time spent at a standstill in the box, it could really pay out for him come the end of the race. Just looking at their differing lines there, you can see Vigo is really going for the apex early in the hairpin. Rizzo going for that late apex, focusing on getting that straight line advantage. It's not really working for him well in that section, but Vigo, he's really leaning on the front tires of his car, it seems, similar to what Peacenik is doing.
Yeah, well, I think that's one thing you do have to kind of do here at Sebring. Of course, it is a very abrasive circuit, and of course, turn-in is difficult. We're getting late into a stint now, 28 minutes into this race. Sorry, a bit less than that, but we're still a long way into this race at the moment. And you do have to work these tyres quite hard around Sebring, because we mentioned it earlier with the differing tarmac changes around this circuit. Some not even tarmac, some concrete, as we do head into a concrete section of circuit now. And I think what Ross Rizzo was trying to do, we saw him, especially at the hairpin, as he loses a little bit of time on the exit here. Through that hairpin, we saw him take a much wider line, which was not putting stress on the tyres at all. And that is going to help him with not just keeping life into the tyres, but tyre temp as well. Of course, not using it up as much. You keep the tyres cooler. And we do know that the iRacing tyre model is very, very sensitive to temperature. So when we pit, the temps will fall once again. But if Rizzo's tyres are even cooler than Miguel Vigo's, he's going to have a very, very fast race car, for the first 2 laps out of the pits.
Yeah, he certainly will. And just briefly, I wanna draw your attention to an incident I just observed back in the field. Joshua Skin in car 999, really, that was very close at the start of that lap. He briefly, I don't know, he almost went right into Desmond Harburger, but just managed to slip by on the inside, going completely sideways. Incredible stuff.
That was amazing. Awesome reactions also from Desmond Harburger to actually avoid that accident as well. He could have easily turned into the corner and, taken himself out, but he was looking in his mirrors and he saw a very, very out of control Ferrari. And fair play to keep it on track for both of them. Well, not so much Josh Skin, as he's gone off again, hit the concrete. And unfortunately, I think Josh Skin, your night is over.
Yeah, definitely looks that way. Very stricken Ferrari now in the pits, just getting passed by Benjamin Johnson, who is making his scheduled pit stop. But back up the front, it seems like a lot of these guys are holding out for quite some time.
They are, but one thing to keep an eye on here is that your 2 boys in the Fusion Sim Racing cars, Trent Thomas and Alexander Bird, doing a fantastic job and very slowly closing in on this battle for P number 2. They've made very good gains over the last few laps. In fact, last lap around was 0.6 of a second in the favor of the Fusion Sim Racing cars. This battle for P2 is about to get a lot more interesting.
Yeah, certainly is. Trent Thomas there with a 2-minute flat, basically. I'm going to have a look at his last lap times. Yeah, he's basically, for the last 4 laps in a row, kept it in the low 2 minutes in terms of lap times. Meanwhile, Ross Rizzo, he's been getting gradually slower over these last few laps. He does a 2-minute .3, does Rizzo. What does Trent Thomas do? A 2-minute .3 as well. So Rizzo responding nicely there at the moment. I don't remember, Trent Thomas and Ross Rizzo, they had quite a few battles in Season 1 of the Oceanic Sprint Championship, so they are no strangers to each other on the track. But I get the feeling that Rizzo might be getting a little frustrated here behind Vigo.
Yeah, I think that as well, and I think that's a lot because we saw it just a little bit there heading into the turn 3, 4, and 5 complex. Vigo's starting to take very slight defensive lines into a few places, turning in a bit earlier than you perhaps normally would. So I think Vigo knows he's a little bit under attack. He doesn't need to be defending right now, but you're just seeing a few little indications that he's nervous. He's looking in his mirrors a little bit, because he'll go to the left of the track as he normally would, but bring it in quite early to the apex, a lot earlier than Rizzo is. And that's just allowing Rizzo to close in just a little bit more. You can see they're heading towards the tower corner that Rizzo has found a lot more time. Takes a very unique line there for Rizzo, trying to square off the braking zone a little bit more. But Vigo not looking as comfortable as he was a few more laps ago, losing time a lot more considerably now to Anthony Winkleman. That gap now out to almost 4 seconds. these BMWs are coming on strong. The Audis perhaps not so much.
Yeah, looks like that. But looks like the battle between Carlos Vila and Philip Morton. Goodness me, Morton's just come out of the pits. They've gone side by side through the hairpin, and Vila has gotten his way back past Morton there. So an update in that battle.
Yep, and Morton obviously is going to go very late on the brakes. Almost found the rear bumper of Carlos Vila. Somehow did not make contact, but that was very, very close. I was going to say, I think Morton will want that position back. He almost got it back a little bit early in the wrong way, but fortunately no contact made. And Vila getting a little bit of a scrappy exit there, trying to run away from Philip Morton now. So these two, I think that battle will continue on a little bit longer if Morton can find just a little bit more pace. But for now, Carlos Vila finally gets that move done, which he was trying to for so long.
Yes, indeed. And on Morton's part, I mean, I know GT3s have tyre warmers, but you still got to let them come up to temperature a little bit. So I think perhaps Morton was expecting there to be a little bit more grip under brakes than he actually got. And you can see there, Vila has already pulled out quite the considerable gap. So it's working really well for him right now. Morton tends to be trailing behind a bit more.
Yeah, he does. He just doesn't quite look like he has the pace on these newer tyres that the Audi in front of him does have. So we'll have to wait and see as we're getting a few more drivers now coming into the pits. We've had Adam Briggs recently come into the pits. Now Corey Ott for Bushfink Racing making his way to the pits, and we'll see where he rejoins. Looks like he'll have clear track, so he'll be able to fire it away straight away. So that's good news for his debut race in this series for his new team. But now the interesting question comes. We're coming to 15 minutes left in this race. No one really from the top 5 has even thought about a pit stop yet, but now might be the time to start thinking.
Yeah, certainly would. I mean, you see drivers in lower positions, they're getting their pit stops done. Adam Briggs, he was starting to feel a bit more pressure from Craig Edwards in the last couple of laps, and he's actually involved in a bit of a fight here, trying to make his way past, well, he's managed to get past Brett Hender, not without a bit of resistance. So Briggs, that might have hurt him relative to Edwards. Just taking a look at the guys further up, it seems like once again the top 4, 5, 6 avoiding the pits. So
yeah, no one looks to be taking it just yet, do they? So perhaps there is some advantage later in the race as Leighton Fine will be the first on this lap to dive into the pits. And of course, he was in a very interesting fight. He was defending from Thomas Hins and also trying to attack John Peasneck. So Pete will have to expect this to start getting a bit of a chain reaction, because there is an undercut. You know, even though they're not changing tyres, there is an undercut because the tyres cool down, helps the pressures, yada, yada, yada. They're going to be able to go quicker at the straightaway out of the pits. So these drivers are going to have to start responding. So Peasneck will probably respond on the next lap, I would imagine. That will probably set off Craig Edwards, who will then tell his Fusion Sim Racing teammates, hey, probably time to come in. I think it's about to get set into the pit stop time, because a lot of drivers will be coming in the next few laps.
yeah, certainly. It's really coming up to that pit window now as Fine exits the pits just behind Matt Kidd, Brett Hender, and Adam Briggs. So this is going to be really interesting, as we're hearing that Philip Morton is back in the pits and really dropping in positions. Not quite sure what's going on there. I'm going to rewind. Damage to the front, so he must have had some kind of
oh,
incident.
hang on. Something's happened to Ross Rizzo.
Oh, what? Oh, no. Surely
oh, no.
not.
Sorry, that was my timing screen playing up. I got a message that Trent Thomas had gone past, and I was very worried for Ross Rizzo there. Apologies for the minor heart attack, guys. But fortunately, Ross Rizzo still holding P3, but Trent Thomas now still holding P4. Apologies for that, guys. Timing screen's not playing too nice, but we'll see if anyone does indeed come into the pits this time around.
Yes, indeed. So eyes are going to be on Anthony Winkleman first and foremost. Is he going to stick to the right? No, he is not. What about Vigo and Rizzo? What are they going to do? They are going to avoid the pits once again as well. Trent Thomas does the same. Alexander Bird does the same. What about Craig Edwards and John Peasneck? What are they going to do? They are going to do the same. So these guys are all trying. It's all about who blinks first. I mean, but that doesn't make any sense. You want to be the first driver who pits.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be staying out quite this long because there is an undercut around here. As Peasnick so sideways in a turn number 1. How did he hold on to that? Peasnick, I know you'll have to slide the car around, but please, the rear tires are begging. They're crying mercy for just anything, but somehow keeps it on track, still holding P number 7, trying to chase down Craig Edwards. But I'm very surprised we're not getting anyone trying it, especially someone like Ross Rizzo, who right now is stuck behind Miguel Vigo, being caught from behind by Trent Thomas. I'm surprised no one's going for this yet, Reese.
Yeah, I mean, like we've seen drivers further back in the field do what we expected them to do. Among them, James McKee and Brett Hender finally going into the pits. As I'm just seeing Corey Ott and Steve Jansen are actually involved in quite the interesting battle there. I'll probably keep an eye on that in laps to come. But yeah, everyone up the front, it doesn't make sense to me. Do they know something that we don't?
If there is something to know, I want to find out. This is going to be an interesting last 12 minutes of this race to see what is going to unfold. Of course, coming out to a little bit of the lap traffic at the moment, that is Ben Wilkinson just in front of the battle for P number 2. He's going to do the awesome thing and get right out of the way and not play any factor. So kudos to those guys who do get out of the way for the lapped cars. It's not obviously required in iRacing, but it's a very, very nice thing to do. Unfortunately, he gets out of the way, but I will have to wait and see if anyone's going to dive into this time around. And indeed, Anthony Winkelman dives to the pit lane, and I can imagine this is going to trigger a lot. Rizzo stays out. Vigo does dive for the pits.
There we go, Trent.
Thomas comes in.
Alexander
Bird. Here we go. It's pit stop time, Reese.
Yes, it is. And Craig Edwards is going to follow them in. So Peasnick as well. So almost everyone except Ross Rizzo pitting at the same time. And I get the feeling that Rizzo might not have wanted to stay out.
Well, the thing is, has he saved enough fuel to have a very short pit stop and come out in front of these guys despite the overlap? Most of the pit stops we've been seeing, so actually, in fact, I'm looking at the stop times, they've been very jumbled. Some from 9 seconds all the way to 17 seconds. But our 4-hour race leader, it's 10 seconds of fuel. Vigo 10 seconds, 9.9 for Trent Thomas. So around that range we're looking. So if we can get Ross Rizzo to have a 9-second flat or maybe an 8.5-second pit stop, he might be able to get the job done on Miguel Vigo. But more importantly, look at Trent Thomas. That is such a huge amount of time gained in the pit stop.
It certainly is, and he's really pressuring the back of Miguel Vigo now. And depending on what Rizzo does, he might come out right with these guys. So eyes will be on Ross Rizzo as he most likely comes in this lap. I get the feeling that, considering that he was so close to Vigo, goodness me.
Trent Thomas was just very late on the brakes there. Didn't know if he was going to pull it up.
Yeah. Well, talking about Rizzo versus Vigo, Rizzo was really, he was sort of bunched up behind Miguel for the last few laps. So maybe he's trying to offset when he pits in relation to Vigo just so he can get him out of his hair. Who knows?
Yeah, that is potentially an option. So we might even see the true pace of Ross Rizzo right now out in clean air. Can he potentially do something and undercut or overcut all these guys? But more importantly, is there anything Miguel Vigo can do to respond to Rizzo or Trent Thomas behind? Because he is where all the action is happening around right now. Because Trent Thomas looking very quick in that Mercedes AMG and is really pushing, trying to hold on to the back of that AMG. But look who's now in the pit lane, as we would expect, only going 1 lap longer. Ross Rizzo makes his way down at 70 kilometers an hour. Such a slow pit lane. And there's a few tricks he can play here. Can he, try and go very late on the brakes into the pit entry, gain some time there? Can he turn the pit speed limiter off and just coast through the pit lane for a bit more time? And more importantly...
overshot! He overshot! Ross Rizzo overshot!
Oh, no! That is disaster.
Oh, any advantage he would have gotten
too. That would have been brilliant. Or is it still brilliant?
Yeah, he might still be able to do this.
That is a big, big move from Ross Rizzo. He moves his way almost into position 2. He will get it. Yes. But the concern is that is 2 seconds less fuel than the car behind. 2 seconds.
One hell of a fuel-saving drive this would have to be from Ross Rizzo if he can pull this off. I can't wait to see how this turns out. How close was he to completely losing that, though?
Well, imagine the lead he could have potentially had if he didn't overshoot. That would have been a brilliant strategy call. And that's what would have potentially got him this second place in this race here. He would have had probably a second and a half on those guys, could have fuel saved quite a lot on his outlap, might have been okay. But now there is no margin for error for Ross Rizzo here. He has to fuel save, which means going slow into braking zones. Miguel Vigo should be good on fuel. He has the most fuel out of anyone in the top 4 cars. So this is going to be very interesting. Vigo has nothing to lose. Rizzo has a championship lead and a second place.
Yeah, he certainly does. So he won't want to mess this up. This would have to have been an informed choice by Rizzo to go for a pit stop that short. He must know what he's doing, surely.
Well, the interesting thing is that his sister car, of course, you know, Winkelmann can, of course, afford to play it a little bit safe because he does have a 6-second lead at this point. He's doing a fantastic job. The only car that was lapping consistently in the 59s at one point in the race. But Rizzo, who gets a very average exit, fortunately Vigo behind does not get much better. But Rizzo is where the real question mark is going to be on, because the only other car to have a pit stop even remotely that short is Maurizio Lastres down in position number 9 at the moment. So a few guys are going for the ultra risky fuel save game, but is it worth it?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. We got 4 laps to go in this race now, so the timer will be running out very shortly. Big battle here for 2nd to 4th place. So Ross Rizzo for Trick Sim Sports as... Oh, Alexander Bird back in? What on earth is going on there?
He is.
I'm seeing Thomas Hins and Leighton Fine going side by side into turn 1 just up ahead. Goodness me, that's quite interesting, but a 2-second stop for Bird. Maybe he's short-fueled.
Yeah, potentially, but Leighton Fine and Thomas Hins not quite over yet. They're going to continue side by side for the 2nd corner in a row. Almost contact between the 2mm stuff between them. Hins is not going to give it up. He's going to go round the outside.
Are you kidding me?
Let's continue. It's going to continue once again, heading towards the hairpin around the outside. Thomas Hins, stand up and applaud if you can hold on to it, but that's a big if. Fine, looking around the outside of the hairpin. He's so late on the brakes. So late. Carries around the outside. Can he get the exit? Just about cuts the corner. It's still side by side. This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now. Audi versus Audi down the straight. Leighton Fine somehow gets the position just about back. Hinsey not quite able to carry it.
Oh, run wide.
This is still going on. Thomas Hins almost got the position back. That was fantastic.
Awesome racing. That is why I love watching this championship. Right there. You want to know why Oceanic Sprint Championship is one of the best series in AusNZ right now? Just cut out that little bit of racing. There you go. Done.
Fantastic stuff. Thomas Hins and Leighton Fine stand up no matter where you finish. That was a fantastic battle and all worthy of an applause. But we must turn our attention back to position number 2 because Ross Rizzo has a mirror. All 3 mirrors, everything. Do not look behind you, Ross Rizzo, because Miguel Vigo is there. He is attacking, and one missed apex could be disaster for Ross Rizzo here.
It certainly could. I mean, you know, once again, it comes back to what if Ross had not overshot his pit box? He could have been far ahead of these guys, and he wouldn't have had to worry at all. Especially down the straights, he's going to have to watch out for that Audi of Miguel Vigo. Just, that's interesting. I'm looking down through the timesheets, and it seems that Craig Edwards has lost yet more time. He's actually down where Corey Ott and all that are.
Yeah,
he had a second stop as well.
Stop. So, disaster there for Craig Edwards, of course, fighting for 3rd in the championship. Has, you know, his championship rivals had so much issues, and now he finds himself down in 13th place, but looking very racy behind Steve Jansen in the CMR racing car. So we'll have to wait and see if he can make any move there. But for Craig Edwards, not the day he would have wanted, which did start out so promising, starting in 7th, immediately hooking up with his teammates in that big train, but unfortunately was not to be.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a pattern there. Alexander Bird and Craig Edwards, both in FSR Audis. So I get the feeling that there might have been a strategy call gone awry there.
Yeah, very possible, unfortunately, for those guys. But GT racing is always tough, and we'll have to wait and see if anyone can indeed make it home with the Audi. Because, of course, if those guys did get the strategy wrong, there is every reason someone else out there did get the strategy wrong as well. but I will have to wait and see, of course. So we'll just keep our eyes still on this battle as Craig Edwards getting very racy behind the back of Steve Jansen. Of course, Jansen not quite getting the best exits, a little bit in the dirt there. And he's got a lot of pressure behind him because, of course, Jansen qualified down in 23rd. May not have been reflective of his overall car speed, but down in 23rd. Craig Edwards qualified 7th. That is a big difference in overall qualifying pace. But this is going to be an uphill battle, I think, for Steve Jansen.
Adam Briggs. Oh, no, he's just spun. Adam Briggs. Really unfortunate for him. At Sunset Bend, no less. Very difficult place to get going from after you've lost it. Conversely, a very easy place to lose it, and he is going to get back up to speed right next to Andrew Welter. So, obviously, Briggs not in a very good position right now, especially compared to where he was. Looks like he just lost it on his own in the mid-corner. Real shame.
And we did say that the bumps around this circuit could be so vicious if you do not set the car up right, but unfortunately was not to be. We'll go back to Craig Edwards, though, because he is getting very racy, even more racy than he was in the last few laps against Steve Jansen. Had a think about it into turn 1, could not get the job done, but Jansen just beginning to make a few little errors under this pressure that's being put under. And if this continues, because of course Jansen taking slow lines to defend, this could bring Corey Ott into this battle as well. But look at the exit Craig Edwards did get out of that corner. Not going to be able to do anything with it into the hairpin, but he could potentially set himself up for a run into the next corner.
He certainly could. Have a look at how much better Craig Edwards is under the brakes there. Jansen goes a little bit wide in the hairpin. You can tell Edwards is a little bit frustrated there behind Jansen. It'll be interesting to see what he can do here. He was messed up there on the exit of the hairpin, unable to get that run into this next braking zone. So he's just going to have to focus on his traction because the BMW is the superior car in this section of the circuit. Of course, all these drivers will know that, so it's up to Edwards here. Have a look at the... Oh, he got a big punch there out of the exit, but he's got nowhere to go. They're going to go side by side here. Edwards might have to try and go for the dive here at Le Mans, and he will. So there we go. Jansen will not hold the outside, and Edwards is finally through.
Well, we'll see if we can get a crossover, but we'll turn our attention over to Thomas Hens, who has found himself in a complete cluster right now. And look at the exit he's got. That is fantastic exit. Brilliant drive from the All-Star Motorsports Audi R8. He's all over the gearbox of Leighton Fine in the Mad Cow racing car. We're on to the last lap now. White flag in the air. So Leighton Fine going to have to defend for everything he's worth. But around the outside, Hinsy's done it once. Not afraid to do it twice. Job done for Hinsey. And now Leighton Fine under pressure from Lastris. It just keeps going on, this battle. This is fantastic stuff. But Hinsey finds himself up one spot. Lastris demoted down one. And that is very, very good moves from Thomas Hins around the outside for not the first time tonight.
Yes, certainly. Hinsey, got a crash. Oh, no, that's Briggs and Welter there coming together in the background. That is a real shame there. Briggs' race just going from bad to worse. And that was started by Alexander Bird.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you have 3 cars that close together, heading towards that a braking zone is difficult. As that one there's always a chance of incidents going wrong, and unfortunately, a lot of contact there. But unfortunately, fortunately, Welter, Briggs, and Bird have all managed to continue and not lost any more spots apart from to each other. So they've all continued and will fortunately finish because it is the last lap, of course. And one driver that knows it's the last lap and is excited for that is going to weave down the back straight is Anthony Winkelman. Hasn't had much screen time tonight, Reese, but it's just because of how fantastic of a job he's done tonight.
Yeah, certainly. We've seen that in various championships. No screen time for the guy at the front just because he's been completely untroubled. And Anthony Winkelman is going to take a dominant win here at Sebring, round 7 of the Oceanic Sprint Championship. And Ross Rizzo will make it a Trick Sim Sports 1-2. Excellent drive from both of those guys. And Miguel Vigo will just complete the podium.
Yep, fantastic job from those guys, and we'll have to wait and see if anyone's going to have any issues. As Thomas Hins, I thought, had missed anything, but that was
Lastris out of fuel.
Very close. But look at Lastris; he's run out of fuel, and that's a long way from home.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Making it.
Oh, he is going to just fall down the order. He's getting passed by Peasneck, getting passed by McKee, getting passed by so many drivers there in the latter reaches of the midfield. What a shame for Lastres. He had such a good drive up to that point.
And let's not forget that Lastres took the same amount of fuel as Ross Rizzo did, so that just shows how important fuel saving can be. Rizzo ends up in second place tonight, and Lastres might lose another spot at the death, and unfortunately has nothing to do as he coasts across the finish line at a stunning 52 kilometers an hour.
Goodness me, what an end to the race from Lastres. But wow, that race, once again... Oh, hang on a minute. We got something still going on here between Philip Worley and Cameron Dance. Goodness me, Cameron getting off into the grass, and Worley is going to have the run there. Looks to me like Dance will have to settle for 27th position there.
We'll have to wait and see, but of course, Philip Worley's only taken 7 seconds of fuel, so he has not taken much at all this lap. In this race, so we'll have to wait and see if he does in fact cough, but I'm just hearing that he has taken a second stop, so he should be okay across the finish line, and he will take 26th position away from Cam Dance on the final lap. So even when the checkered flag has fallen, it hasn't quite fallen for everyone, and the action will still continue. What a fantastic race that was, as always, Reese.
Yeah, certainly. You know, typical for the Oceanic Sprint Championship, and fuel was the order of the day here. A lot of drama involving fuel, but one team that had no problem with that was Trick Sim Sports, a 1-2, Anthony Winkleman and Ross Rizzo. Miguel Vigo completing the podium for Geodesic Racing, Trent Thomas for Fusion Sim Racing in 4th position. Thomas Hins, All-Star Motorsports in 5th place, with Mad Cow Racing's Leighton Fine coming home in 6th. Carlos Vila in 7th, with Alexander Bird in 8th. Adam Briggs in 9th, and Andrew Welter rounding out the top 10.
Craig Edwards brings himself into position 11 with 2 pit stops, unfortunately, for the Fusion Sim Racing driver, with a great move in the final few laps though on Steve Jansen, who comes home P12. Corey Ott, John Piesnick, and James Mackay round out the top 15, with Richard Hunter, Oratio Lastres, who came to a heartbreaking final lap, unfortunately for him, but still manages to move forward from his grid slot today, so a very good race regardless for Lastres. Matthew Kidd, Brett Hender, and Philip Morton, who all found themselves in battles during the race, round out the top 20.
Dan King comes home in 21st position. Benjamin Johnson making a really good jump there from 34th to 22nd at the end, followed by Reese Keane in 23rd. Daniel Misdale in 24th. 25th position for Jabin Wood. Philip Worley in 26th, with Cameron Dance in 27th after that little scrap between those two on the last lap. Matthew Huppards, 28th, and Ben Wilkinson, our last driver to finish on the lead lap, in 29th. The top 30 rounded out by Martin Silvassi, 1 lap down.
Yeah, and Damon Stockton will join him 1 lap down, as will Les Peck. Adam Wright, the first of our drivers, 2 laps down, and then unfortunately our casualties from a brutal night here at Sebring International Raceway includes Desmond Harburger, Joshua Skin, Brad Cooper, Blake Neck, who suffered internet dramas, as well did Dylan Shepard, and Brad D. Watson with that interesting issue on the very first lap.
Well, that is your 39-car field done and dusted for round 7 of OSC, of course, presented by Geodesic Racing. What a race that was once again. I feel like we actually say that after every single round of this series, but that really speaks to how good it is.
Oh, I think it's just such a brilliant series. The rules that it has, the pressure it puts on drivers with the fuel restrictions that we saw really come into play here tonight, and also the circuits of choice that have been given to this calendar is just making it such a brilliant championship to watch every single week. And I think next time we do visit this series, which will be at Road Atlanta on the 9th of May, I think we're in for yet another classic.
Yeah, certainly. Road Atlanta, one of the best racetracks in the United States, and always throws up a good race. I can't wait for that 8th round of the championship, of course. The series does not end there. We'll be going to Phillip Island on the 23rd of May, and then the 1-hour-long series final at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Of course, the World Endurance Championship layout on the 6th of June. So you got some races to pencil into your schedule there. But wow, that was a fantastic race to be sure. And we've got a couple of drivers coming in for interviews. I think the first we might go for... Oh, sorry, Miguel Vigo
okay.
in the commentary box here. Welcome. You finished third in your Oceanic Sprint Championship round 7 at Sebring, and an incredible battle with Ross Rizzo all the way through. How was it from your perspective?
It was actually a lot of fun. I kind of wanted to join this race because I saw my other teammates doing it last week, so I figured I wake up at 5 a.m. to run with you guys. The race overall was very very good. The start was a little bit chaotic. I guess Winkleman slept at the start there, and but he just walked me. I was losing about point 0.2 on the straight to him. It's just the weight penalty on the Audi just makes it really hard to drive quick. And I knew Rizzo was going to stay behind me the entire way and save fuel. So unfortunately, I took too much fuel, and that just basically let him catch up to me and pass me on the pit stop game. But I tried to basically come back there at the end, and I kind of messed up sector 6 there on that back straight because I saw he messed up, and I kind of followed him, and then that messed up my line. And but there's a pretty good place to be considering just the pace of the Audi just wasn't, just needed those couple tenths more, and it just wasn't there.
I'll tell you what, it was close between you and Rizzo. It would have been even closer because I don't know if you're aware, but he actually overshot his pit box when he went to pit.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that explains a lot.
So yeah, that's I guess it's what could have been, but still a podium on your series debut. Will we see you in future rounds? Is the question.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, it just depends on work schedule and all that stuff, but I'll definitely be here for the next round in Road Atlanta, which I think I just heard was announced.
Yeah, certainly. Road Atlanta. Can't wait to see you there, Miguel. Thank you very much for joining us in the commentary box. Anyone you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to thank my team, Geodesic, all those guys, all the hard work they've been putting in, especially for OSC and our future endeavors that will hopefully take us to pro next year. And I want to thank you guys as well. You guys have a really top-notch broadcast. Always enjoyed your V8 Supercar broadcast stuff, so keep doing the good work.
Thank you very much, Miguel. We will see you in 2 weeks' time.
All right, guys. Cheers.
So that was Miguel Vigo in third position. I think we will now go to our top two, Anthony Winkleman and Ross Rizzo. We'll go to Anthony first. Congratulations on the win, Mr. Winkleman. It seemed to be a fairly untroubled race from you there.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Yeah, it was pretty cruisy up front, but it was still obviously trying to maintain the gap. I had to keep a reasonable push about me, knowing Ross and Miguel were there, so that was a good race.
Was there any point in the race? I know that Ross had a couple of issues. Were you aware? And were you fuel saving at all?
Yeah, I was. I was trying to do as much as I could, knowing Ross is always good on fuel, and he had a pack in front of him to or he had a driver in front of him to be able to fuel save and still keep good pace. So knowing he was going to get a good jump in the pits, I was sort of had to do my own saving on my side too. So yeah, cut my burnout time a bit short, but it was worth it.
Of course. Well, in terms of the pit stops, we were curious because we noticed that quite a few drivers further down in the field were going for that early pit stop to try and undercut their rivals. But you guys in the top 6, top 7 didn't do that. What was the reason for that? Why were you going for the later pit stop?
Well, there was no real point in pitting early for us. I think we never really run into traffic that was bad enough to warrant having to pit early, and we kept that gap going with each other. We all had good momentum in the race, so there was no point. We weren't going to only put ourselves in lap traffic if we were to pit early.
That's a very good point. Well, coming up to the next round, at Road Atlanta. I assume you're looking forward to that, especially considering your past performances in this championship.
Yeah, man, Road Atlanta's always a favourite for me. I don't know why, but always been a bit of a teeth gritter with the BMW, but it's definitely come into its own now with all the BOP adjustments, and it's competitive in a straight line, so it should be a real good show around there.
Excellent stuff. Well, before we let you go, Anthony, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, just our sponsors, HRS Simulations, HPP Simulations, Trick Fabrications, and Trick Sim Sports as well.
Excellent
And also
stuff.
the boys from GLA that host the session. They do a cracker job every fortnight, so hats off to them.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Anthony. See you at Road Atlanta.
Thank you, mate.
Going now to Ross Rizzo in position number 2. Ross, we were there with you when you overshot your pit box at your pit stop. Did you think that second place was lost?
Almost. I wasn't sure. I was just praying that when I got out that it was going to be marginal, and my God, it was. But yeah, my heart broke a little bit when it said too far forward. I was like, "You're kidding me!" So yeah, I had spent that whole first stint fuel saving behind Miguel simply because I know I didn't have the pace on him, so there was no point attempting a pass. So I just lifted early, took it easy, and then found myself about 2-3 liters better, and then blew it by going over by overshooting. So there you go.
Well, you managed to win out in the end, and especially coming out of the pits, that was a very intense battle between you, Miguel, and Trent Thomas. And well, I suppose you were fuel saving that entire race behind Miguel, and fuel saving, I suppose, is the name of the game for you guys in this championship. Were you fuel saving after the pit stops?
No, I couldn't afford to, simply. But yeah, I knew I would have been fine from the calculations. So I just ran it rich the whole way. But it was interesting knowing that having to change the driving style at the in the second half. I was nearly missing a couple of apexes and stuff, and thinking I was going to be easy pickings for both Miguel and Trent behind me.
Well, either way, you came out of it with a second place, and that has certainly helped your championship lead. So with Adam Briggs not having a good result at all, in fact, he finished down in 9th place. I suppose you're feeling pretty confident coming into the final 3 races of the season.
Yeah, pretty happy, but I'm going to try and keep celebration subdued until the final round. Didn't think I'd make it this far, so we'll just see how we go.
Excellent stuff, Ross. Well, we will see you at Road Atlanta in 2 weeks' time. Congratulations.
But thanks, guys.
So that is Ross Rizzo there. I think the next guy will come to our second last interviewee of the night, Trent Thomas. 4th place for you, Trent, in that Mercedes. You must be happy.
Yeah, I definitely am. The AWS Mercedes was pretty hooked up there tonight. Start was a bit, how you going? But eventually got a bit of a rhythm going and was chasing down the guys at the end before the stops, and made a bit of a blue the last couple of laps and got a slow down, which took me off the back of the pair of them, and unfortunately couldn't fight right to the end for that podium position.
It was still a very good run from you, Trent, especially in the pit stops. You had a 9.9 second stop, which really really put you in a good position towards the end. I noticed, though, that Craig Edwards and Alexander Bird unfortunately miscalculated and had to go in for a second stop. What was the atmosphere in the team channel like after that?
To be honest, I had to actually mute the team chat in those last few laps, but I have to say a massive, massive apology to my 2 teammates, Alex and Craig. I knocked the last pit exit cone when I come out of the pits, and the 2 of them both got a penalty for unsafe pit exit, so they had to do a stop and go, which, yeah, which is a bit unfortunate. So massive, massive apologies to those 2 guys. I took away a pretty decent result for them.
We thought that it was a fuel miscalculation, but wow, okay, so that was the reason for Alexander and Craig's second pit stop. Well, that is a real shame for you guys. It did take away a very good result, but still, with the pace that you guys have, you in basically the lower half of the top 5, basically mid top 10. You guys are still in with a chance at getting top 10 positions in this championship. Craig was 3rd coming into this round. You were 9th. So you still got a lot to play for coming into the final 3 rounds.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I missed a race as well. So pretty happy to be in the top 10 with a missed race. I'm not sure if drop rounds have been taken into account yet, but target coming into this season was definitely try and get some top 10s. And that was the overall goal. This particular race, I definitely wanted a top 5 and was hopeful for a podium. It was sort of there for the taking, but unfortunately just couldn't quite get the move done towards the end there. But quite happy to come home 4th, so in the top 5.
Excellent stuff, Trent. Who do you want to give shout outs to before we let you go?
Definitely have to give to Alex and Craig. Really, really sorry to them guys. The whole FSR crew, and of course our sponsors: Amazon Web Services, Eclipse Signage, and Dripping Paint Graphics.
Excellent stuff, Trent. Hope to talk to you again at Road Atlanta.
Thank you very much.
And finally, we will move to our last interviewee of the night, Thomas Hens. For All-Star Motorsports, a top 5 Hensy. You must be well chuffed with that, especially since you started in 16th. What a run.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting race. I mean, as has been the case with me in these races, quali, not usually my strong suit. I'm usually a bit better in GT3s and race trim and just in most cars, really. So I usually do start a bit further down. That has led to some races of getting an instance and just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and being caught in the scuffles. But this time managed to get through the first lap with some instance in the first few corners. So it was a little bit of a dicey start. We managed to get through without too many issues. And then was sort of, actually, I think I was 13th. I think it was after the first lap. So I was in a not bad spot and then just kept plugging away behind Leighton, I think I was. And I was closing him in, chipping away. And I was looking at it going, geez, I might have a chance of getting him at the end. He pit just before I did, and I hung out till the end of the tank and nearly got him in the pit stops, but just came out behind. And then we had an awesome duel at the end. That was great fun. That battle at the end, I absolutely loved that. That was pretty chuffed with just getting it done and just how we battled. And Lane's been around for so long, and you can really tell with how he drives. The experience was shown there. We both gave each other just the right amount of room. It was just awesome. Just what you want when you're racing. So I love that. And to get top 5, I mean, whenever if I can get a top 15 or top 10, is usually the aim in OSC because it's just such a strong field, and I really only dabble in GT3. I don't really focus on it too much. So to get a top 5, I'm well chuffed. So awesome stuff.
Brilliant stuff. And, the battle between you and Leighton really got some airtime in the last half of the race. It was fantastic to watch. I suppose looking at this kind of performance, I mean, obviously finishing in the top 5 wasn't exactly an expected result for you. As you said, you usually aim for top 10s, top 15s. What do you think this says for the last few rounds of the championship if you choose to make an appearance in them?
I'll keep seeing it out if I can. As long as I'm around, I'll keep seeing it at the championship. So see how we go. But I mean, we'll see. I suppose. I mean, I don't think I'll move the aims up anymore. I'll just keep plugging away. Obviously, it helped as we were mentioning there. It helped that Craig and a couple of guys had those issues there with the pit exit, which kind of put me up a couple of spots. So I was helped by that. But I'll probably just I think I'll keep the same. I think I'll put up any further. Good signs. Hopefully I can carry it on. I mean, obviously the rest of the tracks of the season, from memory, I do enjoy them quite a lot, the rest of the tracks, so that's a good sign. Hopefully, as long as I get a good setup going, which seemed to have today, seemed to have a good setup that was actually meant for Bathurst. I just kind of bolted it on, and I actually went quicker in this set than I did in the sets I have for Sebring, which is a bit weird. But anyway, it works. So I was like, well, I won't deny it. So I don't think I'll change the aims too much, but we'll see. If I can get another top 5 before the end of the season, that'd be pretty fantastic. But I'm just happy to have a good time, have some good racing, and if I get some good results, then great.
Excellent stuff. Well, you were in 8th in the championship standings coming into this round, and considering that your main rivals, as in Silvassi, Dance, Worley, and Fine, all finished behind you, you certainly have a bit of an advantage going into the last few rounds. But before we let you go, Thomas, who would you like to thank?
yeah, I'll just thank our usual long-time sponsors, Rack Corp and Cash Centric. Big thanks for their continued support for the team, and obviously Sim Racing Collectibles, Mr. Jay Candy's venture. Very, very big thanks to him for allowing have his logo on the cars, and obviously big thanks to the team just being awesome environment to race in. I think it's really helped me just getting more out of myself, being in such a great environment amongst such awesome people. And obviously big thanks to GT Leagues for hosting the series, and obviously you guys for, as always, doing a awesome job in the booth. So yeah, thanks again, and yeah, hopefully see you again before the end of the season.
Yep, catch you later, Hinsey. See you in the future.
See you, man.
Well, Bo, that brings to an end our night of proceedings in the Oceanic Sprint Championship. I mean, I said it before. We always say what a race after every single race in this championship, but there's a very good reason for that.
Absolutely. The Geodesic Racing Oceanic Sprint Championship always manages to turn it on. It's always a different challenge. Sometimes it's a bit at pace, fuel saving, or sometimes even controlling the safety car. It's brilliant every single time, and you do not want to miss the next one, that is for sure.
Yeah, certainly. So if you have your calendar at the ready, the next round of the Geodesic Racing Oceanic Sprint Championship is at Road Atlanta on the 9th of May. Be there to see these drivers fight it out in future rounds. We've got one hell of a battle in the championship holding up between Ross Rizzo and his compatriots. It's going to be incredibly interesting. Will Anthony Winkleman continue his fantastic run in this series, or will Rizzo, Briggs, or Edwards break through for another win? We'll see in the future. Thank you very much for joining me, Bo. It was a fantastic night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Indeed. Well, that was Bo Albert. I've been Reese Gardner, and directing has been Jay Kennedy here on V8s Online. Be sure to tune in this weekend for the V8 Supercar Online Premiere Series on V8s Online this Sunday. Be there. We'll see you then. Welcome. What am I doing? We'll see you guys later.